The original 2004 Star Wars Battlefront is a title many remember fondly. While you might have originally picked it up, either because of the franchise it's a part of, or because it just seemed like a novel thing to try at the time, surely if you're watching this video, it's because Battlefront 1 left an impression on you. And not without good reason too either. It is simply a fun game, and one that's still being enjoyed by plenty of people, even now 2 decades, a couple spin-offs, a sequel, and a whole franchise reboot later. And I want to make the case that the reason the original Battlefront has lasted so long isn't just because of the brand name it's attached to, or the story, or the nostalgia factor alone, but specifically because as a team-based shooter, it shows off some of the best map design in gaming, period. So please join me as I briefly break down what makes each of the original Star Wars Battlefront's maps so good. Today, I wanted to talk about what I think might just be the original Battlefront's most overlooked map, Tatooine, Jabba's palace. In the time since Battlefront 1 was released, it's become remembered as a really good Star Wars game. It might have become just a little bit overshadowed by its sequel, or the fact there were, frankly, a lot of other really great games in the franchise around the same time, but all in all, the original Battlefront earned its reputation as a solid team-based shooter, and one a lot of people have fond recollections of. In fact, plenty of people are still playing it to this day, and seemingly anyone who's played it often only has good things to say. What I've noticed, however, is that when you raise the topic of which in-game locations people most fondly recall, there's always just a particular handful of maps you very rarely ever hear people bring up. People always remember Renvar and Hoth and Geonosis, but in my experience, you never hear people recall this one, Jabba's palace, which I think is a shame. Maybe that's just because people remember the 2 other Tatooine maps, Dune Sea and Mos Eisley instead, and forget there was actually a third. Or maybe it's because people just didn't like it as much as a gameplay environment on account of how different it is from most, being the only fully indoor map in the game, and also one of the outright smallest. Or maybe it's just because this map is the only one which doesn't show up at all in the campaign, and nowhere in any of the Galactic Conquest modes either. It's only available through the instant action screen or as a multiplayer map. A lot of people might just have not realised it was here in the first place. But for whatever reason, I'd like to, at long last, finally give Jabba's palace its dues, and take a look at all the little details that went into making it this one-of-a-kind location. Just in case I need to jog your memory, let's start by going over the map's basic layout first. Very first thing you'll notice when you start up around here, Jabba's palace is extremely unique in at least one major respect. It is the only map in the game which is entirely set indoors. Every single area on this map is a room within a giant, grimy castle. The 5 largest rooms on the level all boast their own spawn point command post, but there's a lot more to the map than just them, because in between these major rooms are a whole bunch of overlapping hallways and winding staircases and semi-hidden tunnels, the presence of which really turns this map into a big multi-story maze. There's an armory and a living quarters, and a big throne room and a droid repair bay, and a whole bunch of different designs here to see, all of which feel like accurate recreations of what you see in the Star Wars movies. And the great design work that went into all of these different sections of the map is what really sells it aesthetically. And even though this map is objectively one of the very smallest in the game, it feels like one of the most richly detailed. Everywhere you look is some fantastic bit of intentional design being showcased. That being said, on a mechanical level, all these rooms do essentially play the same role. They're places to fight in. And on a map like this, small and enclosed as it is, there aren't any bigger open areas or vehicles here. this map is entirely about fighting room to room, which admittedly might not be everyone's cup of tea, although I would argue it is definitely good we got at least one map that offers this type of dynamic at least, for the sake of those who do enjoy it, and those who might just like to experience it for the variety of it once in a while. And it's not like this Jabba's Palace map doesn't have its own selling points or unique features beyond just being really pretty either. For one thing, you get something else here that you don't see a lot of in the original Battlefront. There's a third faction here. These melee weapon-toting pigmen Gamorrean guards that patrol the entire palace. These guys are really tough and can respawn infinitely anywhere on the map. They can even capture command posts of their own to increase the rate at which they spawn in. They're a very fitting extra threat for this map, and their axes are a very decent threat in the tight corridors here. Similarly, in the throne room, where Jabba himself watches the battle unfold, there's a trap door that can drop unsuspecting players down into a dungeon below, where there's this giant monstrous rancor that can snatch up and insta-kill any unit that it gets its hands on. It's a fun way to include an extra hazard in this level that pays homage to the films, and also makes the map as a whole feel much more dynamic. And I think it's worth noting that design elements like this, the danger of getting too close to the Rancor, and the fact that pigmen wield these giant melee axes, all ties into the theme of the gameplay on this map itself, that is, close quarters combat. And this carries over to the fighting going on between the two main playable factions that will be present in a round here too. On top of those hazards inherent to the map itself, there's no vehicles here and no usable turrets either, so 100% of the gameplay here is just core infantry mechanics. And while all the basic classes in the game remain perfectly viable here, you'll need to stay on your toes and of course play well to get the most out of them in any competitive match. But you also might need to tweak, or at least slightly rethink, exactly how you approach the enemy with them here, owing to the confines of the map's size and layout. For instance, the basic soldier class is useful here, just like they are roughly in most locations in the game. But you won't have your usual ability to take fights at your ideal medium-range distances from a target, just because there simply aren't any areas of this map all that large, so your opponents will always be a lot closer to you here than they would be elsewhere. Similarly, the sniper has a good high damage output weapon in their rifle, but they suffer even more from not being able to engage the enemy at a distance, and the pigmen guards can often even tank at least one headshot from you on account of their incredibly high health, which is all the more scary as they're bearing down on you with their giant insta-kill axes. And the marksman class's recon droid ability to call down airstrikes simply doesn't work on an entirely indoors and enclosed map like this either. I find that the heavy demolitions trooper class, regardless of what faction you're playing as, is a decent pick here. Even though there aren't any vehicles to fight, you've still got a bunch of effective area denial tools if you use your loadout right. Simply rushing the enemy with your rockets and mines as these guys can be a bit of a gamble, but I find it tends to work well enough on really crowded rooms. You only really need to get in one good shot towards a big group of the enemy after all. And on a map like this, with so many small tunnels and passageways everywhere, there's a lot of ways you can potentially go for ambushes in Jabba's palace. And even if you don't take out a whole enemy squad on your own, hopefully you'll have managed to distract or weaken them enough that your teammates can rush in afterwards and finish the job. Or, if you want to try something really different, the technician class, again, has no vehicles or turrets to repair or use here, but their blaster shotgun or mortar launcher is meant to be effective at close range, which is ideal here, and your ability to hand out health and ammo refills can be very helpful after those big pushes from room to room if you want to keep your team's momentum going. It's good to have variety in a game like this, both in terms of what your gameplay experience is like from round to round on a map, and in terms of what gameplay different maps in the game facilitate overall, which is why I'm a big fan of seeing Jabba's Palace in the Battlefront map roster, even if I would typically prefer fighting in the bigger, more outdoors maps myself most of the time. So give this map a go if you haven't before. It might just surprise you. If you've only ever played the campaign, or if you only join community multiplayer games that run the most popular maps, you might well have not seen this one before. I think all the Battlefront maps stand up perfectly well 21 years later. Don't count this one out just because it's a bit different. And that said, if you might like to hear me break down what makes all those other Battlefront maps so good, there will be a Battlefront map analysis playlist linked at the top of the description. I've done a video now talking about all 17 of them, so if there's another one you want to hear about, it'll be in there. Feel free to check it out. In any case, goodbye for now, and have a lovely day.